Hello everyone, this hour on Verbling, the next in my great short stories series, we're working on Raymond Carver's Cathedral. In this class, we're going to read just an excerpt at the end, and we're going to be discussing the story for the second half. But we are going to read the very end, and in the beginning we're going to go over the themes and characters and things that you need to know to understand the ending of the story. So that's a bit about the class. Here's a bit about me. I'm Jon-Eric, your Verbling teacher for this hour, and I'm an American teacher from New York, hanging out in Lisbon, Portugal to bring you this class. Here are 3 quick rules to help you participate in my class. Don't forget to turn off, tune in, and open up, which means turn off your microphone when you're not speaking so that we can cut down on the background noise and keep the class nice and quiet. Tune in to the new words and vocabulary that you're learning when you are speaking so that I can give you feedback and correct you. And last but not least, open up to your classmates. Relax and have fun. We're all here to learn, and this is a safe and respectful place to practice your English. That is a little bit about my class. Let me get my camera on. Let's see if it's working all right. Ooh, it's a little bit bright. Let me see if I can get that a little bit better. There we go. So one thing we're going to be doing today is, when I get my short story open, there we go, is, you know what? The first thing I need to do is to open everything on my side. So what I'm going to do is quickly download the PDF of the story. No, I have a doc. I'm going to download it as a doc, which is what I did last time. It was a little bit strange. So you know what? No, it's better to PDF. Let me get that downloaded on my computer so I can share my screen, because the last time when I was sharing a doc with you, the Google Hangout was acting a little bit strange. So in the meantime, I'm going to share the link with you in the chat window. All right, there you go. Take a look in the Verbling chat, if it's letting me. Okay, there we go. And I'll also post this inside the classroom right now. So take a look inside the classroom chat. All right. And I think we're ready to go. So I'm going to start by giving a little bit of background in just a second. I just need to open my document so you can take a look. Google Hangout is acting a little bit strange. 1 second here. There we go. Okay, so let me share my screen with you, and we're going to get started with a little recap of what we've learned so far in the story. When you open that link, you'll see this, and let me just again open my notes on my computer and we'll get started. One moment here. I've got to sift through a lot of files because not everything is right in front of me. 1 second, please. And what I'm going to do is start with the plot, give a quick plot summary, talk about the characters a little bit, and then we're going to read just the ending of the story once we've recapped what's happened so far. Okay, I think we're ready now. So, first of all, a little bit of background. As I mentioned the other day, Cathedral is the American writer and poet Raymond Carver's most famous story. It was published in the Atlantic Monthly, which is a literary magazine, in 1981. And Carver, who is often compared to Ernest Hemingway, is known for his bleak and stark portrayals of working class people Um, he's kind of a minimalist writer, the way that Ernest Hemingway was known for creating a very minimal modernist form to his writing. So they seem to share that, or they're compared a lot. On the surface, Cathedral is a story about one dissatisfied man and his encounter with another man, his wife's friend, who happens to be blind. And as we read the story, we begin to see that the blind man is teaching him a new way of seeing. He seems to be a bit prejudiced about the blind man and blind people in general. But beneath the story, beneath the surface of the story, it's about three people who need each other badly and manage to connect in some way. Let me see if I can give you a summary. So, let's start with what we know so far. So far, from what we've read, an unnamed narrator and the unnamed narrator's wife, so we've got two characters, the man and the wife, used to work for a blind man named Robert. Robert's wife has recently died. He's coming to visit the narrator and his wife. The narrator isn't happy about this. He thinks that blind people are sad and depressing. He bases this idea on what he's seen in the movies. Apparently his wife and Robert have been corresponding by audio tapes, by cassette tapes, for the past 10 years. She met Robert in Seattle one summer before she got married, and the man she got married to was training to be an officer in the Navy. On her last day on the job, she apparently let Robert, the blind man, touch her face. Then she wrote a poem about it much later and showed it to the narrator when they began going out. He didn't like the poem, and we get the sense that he wasn't comfortable with what she did. After she'd been married to the officer, her childhood sweetheart, for about a year, she contacted Robert and they began corresponding. She told him she wasn't happy with her life as an officer's wife. At one point, she became so miserable that she attempted suicide. She left her husband and got a divorce. Through all those years, she sent Robert tapes and told him all about her life, and now this is the man that was coming to spend the night or visit her with her new husband. Okay, in the next section that we've read so far, I'm just recapping what we've done so far in the last class. In the next section, the narrator arrives. The narrator finds his wife. Well, actually, I should say the narrator before Robert arrives. The narrator finds his wife in the kitchen making dinner before she leaves to pick Robert up from the train. The narrator makes a joke about him bowling. This upsets her. He's going to take a blind man bowling. This upsets her, and she reminds him rather angrily that Robert is probably grieving over the loss of his wife, Belua. That's her name. She tells him that if Robert doesn't try to make the narrator doesn't try to make Robert comfortable, that means that he doesn't love her. Then she tells him, oh, sorry, one second, little noise here. Okay, sorry about that, a little noise in the background. So, long story short, she tells him that if he doesn't try to make Robert comfortable, it means he doesn't love her. Then she tells him that Robert married Belua after she came to work for him. They had a great marriage, but Belua got cancer and died. The narrator thinks this is incredibly sad, that Belua died without Robert ever seeing what she looked like. And that's what he talks about more than anything. It seems very superficial. He thinks that it must have been terrible for her to go through life without being seen by her husband. In the last class, we picked it up when Robert, the narrator, arrives, makes drinks for everybody, and they all drink while Robert and the woman talk. Soon, they have a big dinner, and everyone seems to be enjoying dinner together. At the end of section 2, which I asked you to read, After dinner, there are more drinks and more conversation. His wife goes upstairs to change her clothes. The narrator rolls 2 marijuana cigarettes, 2 joints, and begins smoking them with Robert, who never smoked marijuana before, but he says it's the first time for everything. When the woman returns, she smokes a little too and falls asleep on the couch between the 2 men. And then there's an interesting moment. And I'd actually like to read the ending of the story here because it's pretty short. The narrator is watching TV and Robert is listening. In between, he seems to be falling asleep. The only thing on is a documentary about a cathedral. And he says something very interesting at this point. He says that they haven't had a chance to talk, even though they've been talking all evening. I'd actually like to pick up the story at that point and just read the ending, because it's just like 3 pages or something. And wait a second. So, Yuki, why don't we go ahead? Yeah.
I have read all the story until end. I was very moved by the story. I like it very much. I have many things to think about it.
Do you think that we could? Do you think that we could read the last 3 pages together?
I think we don't need in this class story because I have read all the story for myself. If there is no other student.
Well, okay. It's because
I'd like to talk about it.
All right, hang on just a second here.
But it depends on you.
Well, it's just that I haven't read since I was about 20 years old. So
how will you forget the story?
It's just that I know it happens, but I kind of wanted to look at the end because there's some details that I don't remember.
Now I know the story more than you.
Probably. Hang on just a second. Let me just take a quick look here. Because basically,
in comparison with another stories in previous classes, this story is not so difficult, so I could read until end for myself.
Just a second.
Only the theme of this story is quite deep, and there are many things to think about. It makes me think about deeply.
Well, I'll tell you what. Let's do this. I'm just looking at the story, and let me just go to part 3. Hold on just a second here. 1 second. Let me just get to part 3 on my side. Because I highlighted a part. Where was it? Well, if it's okay with you, I would really just like to read just the ending where the cathedral begins.
Okay.
If it's all right. It's just because
most interesting scene.
It's the most interesting scene, and
yes, watching the program on TV about the cathedral, and after that they describe a cathedral together on the paper. Yeah.
Yeah. Hang on 1 second. I'll tell you where it is. Starting, I highlighted 86. Yeah. Here we go. So, hang on just a second. Okay. So you should see. Oh, let me make it a little bit bigger. Because it's just the last 3 pages. It's really short. But this is where everything happens, and I kind of would like it to be a little more fresh in my mind. Just because I'm afraid I've got I literally took my notes from university from about 15 years ago, and I've got them in front of me.
Don't worry, I just have read it, so
okay.
I have a memory, very fresh memory.
All right. Well, let me start on the first page. I'll turn it over to you, and then I think there's one more. Okay. So look, let's start here in 86. The TV showed this one cathedral. This is kind of this is like the third act of the story here. Then there was a long, slow look at another one because they're
Yes.
talking about something about Middle Ages and he wasn't paying attention before. Finally, the picture showed a famous one in Paris with its flying buttresses and its spires reaching up to the clouds. I guess he's talking about Notre Dame. The camera pulls away to show the whole of the cathedral rising to the skyline. There were times when the Englishman who was telling the thing would shut up, would simply let the camera move over the cathedral, or else the camera would tour the countryside, men in fields walking behind oxen. I waited as long as I could. Then I thought I had something to say. I said, "They're showing the outside of the cathedral now, gargoyles, little statues carved to look like monsters. Now I guess they're in Italy. Yeah, they're in Italy. There's a painting on the wall of this one church." "Are those frescoes, bub?" What a weird thing to say, bub. "Are those frescoes, bub?" he asked. He sipped from his drink. I reached for my glass, but it was empty. I tried to remember what I could remember. "You're asking me about those frescoes," I said. "That's a good question. I don't know." Oh, look, he got Lisbon here. Look at this. I don't remember this. The camera moved to one outside Lisbon. The difference in the Portuguese cathedral compared to the French and Italian were not that great. Really? That's strange. But they were. Mostly the interior stuff. Then something occurred to me, and I said, "Something has occurred to me. Do you have any idea what a cathedral is? What they look like, that is. Do you follow me? If someone says cathedral to you, do you have any notion what they're talking about? This guy is blind, but he's not from another planet. I don't know why he's asking this. Do you know the difference between that and a Baptist church?" he said. Yuki, why don't you take over at 91?
91.
See where we are?
Just a minute. Okay. He let smoke dribble from his mouth. I know that they took hundreds of workers 50 or 100 years to build. He said, I just heard the man say that. Of course, I know generation of the same families worked on the cathedral. I heard him say that too. The men who began their life's work on them, they never lived to see the completion of their work. In that wise, Bob, they are no difference from the rest of us, right? He laughed. Then his eyelids drooped again. His head nodded. He seemed to be snoozing. Maybe he was imagining himself in Portugal. The TV was showing another cathedral now. This one was in Germany. The Englishman's voice droned on cathedral. The blind man said. He sat up and rolled his head back and forth. If you want the truth, Bob, that's about all I know. What I just said, what I heard him say. But maybe you could describe one to me. I wish you'd do it. I'd like that. If you want to know, I really don't have a good idea. I started hard at the shot of the cathedral on the TV.
Wait a second. I stared hard.
I stared hard at the shot of the cathedral on the TV. How could I even begin to describe it? But say my life depended on it. Say my life was being threatened by an insane guy who said I had to do it or else. I stared some more at the cathedral before the picture flipped off into the countryside. There was no use. There was no use. I turned to the blind man and said, to begin with, they are very tall. I, I was looking around the room for clues. They reach way up and up, toward the sky. They are so big, some of them, they have to have these supports to help hold them up, so, so to
So to,
speak.
so to
So to,
speak.
so to
Yeah.
speak. These supports are called buttresses. They remind of vi-
Viaducts.
viaducts for some reason, but maybe you don't know viaducts either. Sometimes the cathedral have devils and such a carved into the front. Sometimes lords and ladies. Don't ask me why this is, I said. He was nodding. The whole upper part of his body seemed to be moving back and forth. I'm not doing so good, am I? I said. He stopped nodding and leaned forward on the edge of the sofa. As he listened to me, he was running his fingers through his beard. I wasn't getting through to him. I could see that, but he waited for me to go on just the same. He nodded, like he was trying to encourage me. I tried to think what else to say. They are really big, I said. They are massive. They are built of stone, marble to something sometimes. In
Marble,
those
marble too, sometimes.
marble too sometimes. In those olden days, when they built a cathedral, men wanted to be close to God. In those olden days, God was an important part of everyone's life. You could tell this from this cathedral building. I'm sorry, I said, but it looks like that's the best I can do for you. I'm just no good at it. That's all right, Bob, the blind man said. Hey, listen, I hope you don't mind my asking you. Can I, can I ask you something? Let me ask you a simple question. Yes or no? I'm just curious and there's no offense. You are my host. But let me ask if you are in any way religious. Don't mind my asking. I shook my head. He couldn't see that, though. I wink with I wink with the same as a nod to a blind man. I guess I don't believe in it in anything. Sometimes it's hard. You know what I'm saying? Sure I do, I said. Right, I said.
Let me take over the next page
Sure I
here.
do, he said. Right, I
Sure I
said.
do. Sure I do.
Sure I do. Right,
All
I
right,
said.
we're almost at the end. Let me take over the next page of dialogue, and then I think you'll do the last part here. Sure I do, he said. Right, I said. The Englishman was holding forth. My wife sighed in her sleep. She drew a long breath and went on with her sleeping. You'll have to forgive me, I said, but I can't tell you what a cathedral looks like. It just isn't in me to do it. It just isn't in me to do it. I can't do any more than I've done. The blind man sat very still, his head down as he listened to me. I said, the truth is, cathedrals don't mean anything special to me. Nothing. Cathedrals, they're something to look at on late-night TV. That's all they are. It was then that the blind man cleared his throat. He brought something up. He took a handkerchief from his back pocket. You know, then he said, I get it, Bub. It's okay. It happens. Don't worry about it, he said. Hey, listen to me. Will you do me a favor? I got an idea. Why don't you find us some heavy paper and a pen, and we'll do something. We'll draw one together. Get us a pen and some heavy paper. Go on, Bub. Get the stuff, he said. So I went upstairs. My legs felt like they didn't have any strength in them. They felt like they did after I had done some running. In my wife's room, I looked around and I found some ballpoints Those are pens, some ballpoints, and a little basket on her table. And then I tried to think where to look for the paper, for the kind of paper he was talking about. Downstairs in the kitchen, I found a shopping bag with onion skins in the bottom of the bag. Onion skins because, they were shopping. It's from the actual onions. I emptied the bag and shook it. I brought it into the living room. So he's like, kind of disorganized. He's got junk everywhere. I emptied the bag and shook it. I brought it into the living room and sat down with it near his legs. I moved some things, smoothed the wrinkles from the bag, and spread it out on the coffee table. The blind man got down from the sofa, sat next to me on the carpet. He ran his fingers over the edge of the paper. He went up and down the sides of the paper, the edges, even the edges. He fingered the corners. Okay, Yuki, last page here. Want to take it over?
All right, he said. All right, let's do her. He found my hand, and the hand with the pen. He closed his hand over my hand. Go ahead, Bob, draw. He said, draw. You'll see. You'll follow along with you.
I'll follow along with you.
I'll follow along with you. I'll be okay. Just begin now, like I'm telling you. You'll see. Draw. The blind man said. So I began. First, I drew a box that looked like a hose. It could have been the house I lived in. Then
that's a typo. That should say I drew a box that looked like a house, not a hose. It's a mistake.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I didn't understand here. Yes. Now I understand. First, I drew a box that looked like a house. It could have been the house I lived in. Then I put a roof on it. At either end of the roof, I drew spires. Crazy.
Spires are the things on top of a church, by the way.
I know.
Okay.
Swell, he said. Terrific. You are doing fine, he said. Never thought anything like this could happen in your lifetime, did you, Bob? Did you, Bob? Well, it's a strange life. We all know that. Go on now. Keep it up. I put in windows with X.
With arches.
Sorry. I put in windows with arches. I drew flying buttresses. I hung great doors. I couldn't stop. The TV station went off the air. I put down the pen and closed and opened my fingers. The blind man felt around over the paper. He moved the tips of fingers over the paper, all over what I had drawn. And he nodded. Doing fine, the blind man said. I took up the pen again, and he found my hand. I kept at it. I'm no artist, but I kept drawing just the same. My wife opened up her eyes and gazed at us. She sat up on the sofa. Her robe hanging open. She said, "What are you doing? What are you doing? Tell me. I want to know." I didn't answer her. The blind man said, "We are drawing a cathedral. Me and him are working on it. Press hard," he said to me. "That's right. That's good," he said. "Sure, you got it, Bob. I can tell. You didn't think you could, but you can. Can't you? Can't you? You are cooking with the gas now. You know what I'm saying. You are going to really have us something here in a minute. How the old arm? Here I didn't understand. How the old arm? What does it mean?
Well, it doesn't mean anything.
Yeah?
Maybe I can read this page because it's dialogue and listen to Listen to the intonation of my voice on this, okay?
Okay.
Let me just read that part again. This page, because it's just dialogue, it's short. The blind man said, "We're drawing a cathedral. Me and him are working on it. Press hard." Now he's talking to him. He said to me, "That's right, that's good," he said. "Sure, you got it, bub, I can tell. You didn't think you could, but you can, can't you? You're cooking with gas, you know what I'm saying? We're really going to have us something here in a minute. How's the old arm?" In other words, is your arm tired?
Ah.
Right? "How's the old arm?" he said. "Put some people in there now. What's a cathedral without people?" My wife said, "What's going on, Robert? What are you doing? What's going on?" "It's all right," he said to her. "Close your eyes now," the blind man said to me. I did it. I closed them just like he said. "Are they closed?" He said. "Don't fudge." That means don't cheat. "They're closed," I said. Keep them that way," he said. "Don't stop now, draw." So we kept on with it. His fingers rode my fingers as my hand went over the paper. It was like nothing else in my life up to now. Then he said, "I think that's it. I think you got it," he said. "Take a look. What do you think?" But I had closed my eyes. I thought I'd keep them that way for a little while longer. I thought it was something I ought to do. "Well," he said, "are you looking?" My eyes were still closed. I was in my house, I knew it, but I didn't feel like I was inside of anything. "It's really something," I said. Wow.
What is the something? There is no description about what is the something. Yeah. You have to think for yourself about it.
It's true.
What is the something?
It's true, but you have to picture it. I think if you can picture what's happening, it makes a little bit more sense too. So when he says, "This is really something," what does the blind man think is happening at that moment?
Blind man?
Yeah, what does Robert think at that moment?
At that moment, I think blind man feel spiritual tie with the narrator.
Sure, absolutely.
Because
But what does Robert think is actually happening?
This is the first time for the protagonist to close his eyes, and he put himself into a same position of the blind. Yeah?
Right. It's true, but that's not what I mean. What I mean is they both, well, right now, both Robert and the blind man cannot see. I mean, both Robert and the narrator cannot see at that particular moment, right?
Yes. Before narrator, of course, narrator feels sorry for the blind man, but he haven't the same position with the blind.
Yes,
now,
but one second. Before we talk about the meaning, I just want to talk about that line 131 where it says it's really something. So what I'm saying is, in reality, at that moment, Robert is blind. The narrator has his eyes closed. Does Robert think that the narrator's eyes are open or closed at that moment?
Yes.
That's what I'm asking. Does he think that the narrator's eyes are open, or does he think that the narrator's eyes are closed at that moment?
I think something means it's a thing that only blind man can see.
No. Wait. That's not what I mean, though. Wait a second. Let's forget about the meaning for a second. We've got to establish what actually happened in that moment, physically in the room. So, does Robert think the man is looking at the picture?
No.
Yes, no. He does. Yes, he does. That's what I'm trying to say. He does. That line doesn't make sense unless you realize that Robert thinks the narrator is looking at his work, right? Robert thinks that. But the man is not looking at his work.
Yes. He still closed his eyes.
His eyes. Right. Yes. Exactly. So when he says it's really something, Robert thinks he's talking about this great drawing that he did. But the narrator isn't referring to that. The narrator is referring to the fact that the blind man taught him to see, right? That a
Yes.
blind man showed him the new experience. That's all I meant. We can't talk about the symbolism until we see what actually happened.
Mm-hmm.
So it's also a good moment because it's a moment where they don't understand each other, and yet they understand each other more deeply than ever before,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yes.
That's all I meant. That's all I meant.
Mm-hmm.
So
Right, right. Here, Roberts asked, he said, take a look, what do you think? But narrator continued to close his eyes, and, and I, probably he didn't see anything, but instead of it, he could see something. Something,
absolutely.
yes,
What do you think he
something that
saw?
before he couldn't see.
And what do you think he saw? What do you think he saw at that moment besides the darkness? What do you think he saw?
I think he saw the beautiful cathedral in
In his head, you mean?
in his head. In his head,
Yeah.
not only cathedral, something wonderful things,
Hmm.
something something that he couldn't see before, uh, something he couldn't aware of.
So something that he wasn't aware of.
Yes, something he wasn't aware of before. Yes. Um, yes. Now, now he. I think now he feel strong tie
Right.
with Robert, with blind,
Right.
uh, uh, and now he can have compassion for blind,
Hmm.
and not only feel compassion, but also he can think uh, from blind people's point of view.
Right.
So it was like nothing else in his life up to now,
Right.
maybe.
And I just have just a question about Robert himself. Um, do you think Robert um, do you think Robert intended for this to happen? Do you think it was all
Oh,
deliberate?
it was unexpected for him to experience such a, to
For
experience such
Robert?
for Robert. Oh,
Yeah,
for
do you think Robert intended this whole episode at the
uh,
end? Do you think it was an accident or do you think
yes,
Robert
yes. For some extent, he intended to provide the opportunity to protagonist such an experience, um, because he firstly he asked to describe what the cathedral like,
right,
and after that he proposed to draw a picture. Uh, Together, maybe.
right,
Yes, pick a pencil and paper and show him what let him show
right,
him
right.
draw the picture.
And
Maybe.
and and also if you go back earlier in the story, there's a very interesting moment that I mentioned in the introduction because I'm going to see if I can find it. I think I highlighted it here. Let me just go back to before this part in 86, before the cathedral, a little bit before that, it says, let me see if I can find it. Da, 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 da. Uh,
Where?
I'm trying to find it. Hold on. Yeah, here it is. Wait, my watch is okay. Wait, some minutes. No, like at
TV
four.
show began. Yeah,
It's before that.
before the TV show.
Yeah, it's what it's when the wife goes to sleep.
After that, they take a drug together. Yeah.
No, it's after that. But it's the point is that the wife goes to sleep basically, and run the sun coming at you, and then he says, "I'll sleep." Okay.
No, wife was next to them. Just she took a snap
A nap.
on the sofa. Took a nap on the sofa.
Right, right. Oh, here it is. Okay, it's line 78. Paragraph 78. It's this part where Robert says, he says, "Are you tired?" And Robert says, "Not yet. I'll stay up with you, bub, if that's all right. I'll stay up until you're ready to turn in." We haven't had a chance to talk. Know what I mean?
Yes.
So
Robert wanted to have have a chance to talk with protagonist of this story.
Right. And I think I have a feeling that it's more than that. Because he says, "We haven't had a chance to talk." Know what I mean? I feel like me and her monopolized the evening. He lifted his beard and let it fall into place. Okay,
Yes,
fine.
He repeatedly he have lifted his beard. Yeah, maybe it is his habit. Maybe.
Maybe the beard is hiding his face, and we get to see a glimpse. I don't know. But the point is this. The point is, here's my theory. My theory is that the blind man was planning this all along. Maybe not exactly this, but something like it. Because he knew the blind man seems a lot wiser and a lot more in control of himself than the narrator. And when he says, "We haven't had a chance to talk," I think that he's been waiting for this opportunity to get to know the husband.
Indeed. I also think so. He waited to the moment when he could have a talk with the protagonist.
And I have another feeling too. This is you tell me if you agree or not, but I think that he's done this before. I think that what he's done, I think that he's replaying a scene that he's done many times with his wife who just passed away. And I think that there's something hidden in the story, kind of invisible, which is that we could kind of imagine that this is what he and his wife, Balua, used to do. And that he's replaying the scene with this very intimate moment with someone else. And in fact, Robert is intimacy. Everything that Robert does, when we meet him, he's kind of, a little rough, he's kind of loud. But if you notice, Robert's the only one that touches anyone in the story. He touches the wife's neck, and he touches the narrator's hand as he draws the cathedral. And Robert seems to be passing on this intimate moment to the narrator, and he changes the narrator. So it seems to me that if you do a little detective work, you could probably piece together that he's replaying a scene that he did with his wife, this very intimate moment. And
so you think it is not the first time for Robert to
not at all
to maybe
I think Robert did this very deliberately. I think he knew what he was doing, and he was doing it specifically to win over the husband and because he knew that the husband is going to be jealous.
Maybe you are right. There is no description, detailed description about the relationship between Robert and protagonist's wife. What the relationship was? What was it between them? There is no detail.
Right.
So maybe his wife have difficulties in her days with her previous previous husband. She experienced the hard time, and she have such a maybe she have been
She have or she had in the past? I mean, she had a.
she had been consoled, spending time with Robert, maybe in such a way, maybe.
Let me just ask quickly, Ahmed. I don't know if you had a chance to read the story or not, because we're just discussing. Did you have a chance to read this by any chance?
Well, last week I was in this class, but today I just I caught from when you were talking about the paper and draw things, but not from the beginning. But
we read the ending of the story earlier. I don't know if you were following.
Yeah, the ending, yes, yeah.
Oh, okay, good. Because then we can talk about it. By the way, what was your impression after reading the ending?
I think blind people can recognize things by the sense of smell. That's why they pointed out, like, I mean, they mentioned the nose. Yeah. Something else came to mind. Probably it is not related to the topic at all. Usually when you touch the nose while you are talking, it means you are lying or something like that. Is there any sense of lie here in the story?
No, I don't know. I mean, I think that well, I've got if you see the first discussion question, right? I think that this part about, from all you've said about him, I can only conclude. I mean, you hear a lot of this general talk, and I think in the case of, I wouldn't call it lying, but I think in the case of Robert, this loud voice and this really sort of generalized talking and all these little expressions are there to hide his agenda, but his agenda is very benevolent. Like, he wants to disarm people. And in fact, so he's very boisterous and loud. And for the narrator, all that little small talk is to hide his insecurity and the fact that he doesn't really have any idea what to say. He's kind of saying the wrong thing. So I agree with about one thing. I don't think they're saying what they really think through the entire story. That's why in the very beginning we looked at line 131, the last line of the story. That's why I think it's the most interesting line, and the fact that the story builds up to it. When he says it's really something, right? Robert thinks he's looking at his drawing, and the narrator has his eyes closed, and they're referring to two different somethings. So this is a really good moment where they're misunderstanding each other, but they understand each other more deeply than at any point in the story. So it's like there's a convergence at the very end, if that makes sense. So I wouldn't call it lying, but I would say that the subtext is different than the text until the very last moment of the story, and the subtext and the text seem to mean almost the same thing. Almost, if you think about it that way. It's really something for the narrator means he's been moved. He's been emotionally moved by the experience.
Yes, that's an important point. He's not only just saw something, but also he experienced some kind of spirit height, which
heightened like a heightened awareness, maybe.
Heightened awareness. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Such awareness, he hadn't experienced such awareness before. First time he experienced such a height.
Right.
I could add as well that why Cathedral appeared
exactly.
there.
Why not a house?
Not other building, a cathedral. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think cathedral is a symbol of spirit, symbol of sophisticated spirit, and place to pray. So I think I feel that some similarity to the height of spirit with cathedral here.
It's true because he could have drawn anything. He could have drawn his apartment.
Yes, but apartment. But in the end of the story, some documentary film showed on the TV about cathedral. After that, Robert asked narrator to draw the picture of cathedral. I think there are some kind of clue in it.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's the fact that I would say first that it's something spiritual, right?
Yes.
It's the old house of God, and of course that has its overtones. But something else. They keep saying in the story that cathedrals are built over the lifetime, maybe over even more than one generation. It's not something that happens immediately. You don't build a cathedral in a day. And that's part of the reason why I think that Robert, again, it doesn't even matter to the story, but I just have a feeling that Robert planned this because he's done this before. He knows how to get the seeing to see. He knows he's the blind man. He's teaching everyone to see, and he knows how to do it. Yes. So he slowly constructs the bits of the cathedral throughout the story by disarming people, by showing up, and he's a little bit different than their expectations. He's loud. He's friendly. He does things that no one expects, like he smokes the marijuana, right? And the wife says, "I didn't know you smoked," and he's, "Oh, I don't." Right? He did that to make a connection with the narrator. Yes. So he's laying down the foundation for the cathedral, and then he springs his surprise, which is, I'll show you how to communicate with me. I'll show you how to communicate. By the way, could the narrator just communicate at all? My feeling is the narrator couldn't even communicate about anything before. Do his wife and he really communicate? Do you get the feeling that they do?
I think he was reluctant to communicate with blinds. Not only with blinds.
What about his wife? What about their relationship?
There is no concrete description about the relationship.
Oh, there is one.
But I feel there is.
Let me just interrupt on that point. There is one concrete description about the wife and him and their communication. Remember when he says he's watching TV, right? And there's a little description. I don't remember where it is. About that he's done this many. He said he's done this many times before, but he does it alone normally.
Yes, he every night he spent a night alone
without his wife.
After his wife was going to bed, he stayed in the living room and he take a drug alone and watching television maybe.
Right. And what does that say about his relationship with his wife? What does that say? If you don't sleep together, what does that say?
He don't want to sleep with her. I think that indicates not a good condition of their relationship.
Yeah, and maybe it's not, the worst thing in the world, but they've gotten into this habit of, something has gone, not wrong, but just maybe they're in this kind of bad habit. They're not really communicating with each other. They're not being intimate. Look, this is the point, right?
It is very interesting to think that a blind man, Robert, guessed such a relationship between wife and between husband and wife, and that's why he take he took a proposal taking a drug with him.
And
Yes.
probably maybe it's the reason why he visited in the first place.
Yes, maybe.
At least, or if not in reality, then symbolically, because we know that he lost his wife. And what we're reading is a portrait of a man who seems to be losing his intimacy. Because if you notice, whether obviously if they're not sleeping together, they're not touching each other, right?
Maybe.
The only physical contact is Robert touching the hand of the narrator to draw the cathedral. So it seems like Robert is the like in a Greek play, he's the messenger that's sent on stage to fix things or to be the omen or something like that.
Now the blind man, Robert, lost his wife. There is not completely there is no chance to communicate with his wife, and possibly he has heard the situation from the wife of protagonist, and so possibly the main reason of visiting him to protagonist's house is that he want to be a communicator, want to be a moderate, want to be a peacekeeper between husband and wife. Maybe because he now the blind man feel how lonely after losing his wife.
I even have a feeling that he handled losing his wife pretty well. That he's not so lonely. He's lonely, but I feel that he knew how to handle it. And he's the guy who comes and fixes everything. He doesn't want her, his best friend, the wife of the narrator, to lose her husband, and maybe he senses this and he knows he can do something about it. Listen, I have to stop the class here, but I have an idea. I think what I'm going to try to do is give you a short second Raymond Carver story, a really short one that is quite different, but it's very, very short. And so I think what we can do is, I've got a few more questions I can put into our document to think about.
Story?
Also a Raymond Carver, but much shorter. So I think what I'm going to do, I've got to cut you off, sir. I've got to cut you off because I've got to start the next class right now. But what I'm going to do is add a few discussion questions that are of a very different type, more thematic ones, to this document, right? I'll do it after class. Think about those, because we can compare the two stories and read. The other one, we'll read it in 20 minutes. It's very short. It's only 2 pages long. Okay? But we can compare these two stories and how they're a different portrait of intimacy and even marriage. I've got to stop the class now, but I'm going to put that after the next class, and I will give the short story for you to read before class if you like, and we'll take it from there. Sorry, I've got to cut this off because I've got to start the next class on time, okay?
It was the first time for me to read Raymond Carver, but I like it very much.
You're going to have a chance to read a second one very soon, okay? Yeah. Bye for now. I'll be back in just a minute for the business class. Bye for now, everyone.
Bye for now.
Bye.